using shared transcultural heritages to reframe adversarial identity. We have with us Dr. Alan Byrne and Jervis Balan, Natalie Koretsky. Alan, I know from invitation he sent it to me 3 years ago to his big event, the Other Music Fest, the Weimar, Yiddish Summer Weimar in Weimar, Germany. And I've just met now Jervis. So Alan is an American composer, pianist, accordionist, educator, and cultural activist based in Berlin since 1987. He is the founding artistic director of the Yiddish Summer Weimar, which I mentioned a second ago, and the Other Music Academy. He's an internationally recognized for his contributions to the research, dissemination, and creative renewal of Jewish music with Brave Old World, the Other Europeans, and the Semer Ensemble, among others. He's the creator of present time composition, a musical and educational approach informed by cognitive science that integrates the methods of improvisation and composition. In 2016, Alan received the Weimar Prize in recognition of major cultural contributions to the city of Weimar. Our second guest, Jarius Mokus Balan, a Palestinian composer, buzak player, performer, and co-musical director of Caravan Orchestra, and the founder of Ensemble Tijwal. Jarius grew up in Nazareth in the Galilee region north of Israel. He earned his MA in music composition from the State University of New York at Buffalo. After completing his studies in Buffalo as a Fulbright scholar, he continued in the ethnomusicology field and university at the University of Haifa. Currently, he's a PhD student in integrated composition, improvisation, and technology doctoral program at the University of California in Irvine. And Natalie Koretsky was born in Ukraine and made Aliyah, meaning she immigrated to Israel with her family when she was 7 years old. She's currently pursuing a master's degree in musicology from the University of Haifa while teaching music history at Kiryat Yam Conservatory. She's 29 years old and she's a tuba player in the IDF Orchestra. I don't know if that's still correct, but that's what it says.
It was correct, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, but yeah.
I suspect it's something like that. So Alan, take it away.
Thank you, Hanan. First of all, I want to say what a great honor it is really to be a guest of yours. I'm an enormous admirer of Roots. As you know, when I found out about it, my colleague Andreas Schmidtges, who's also here with me this evening, the curator of Yiddish Summer Weimar, and we jumped on the opportunity to dare to invite you to come to Weimar and do a workshop with us on conflict resolution. Of course, the conflicts in Germany are different than those in Israel, but actually what happens in the Middle East affects what happens in Germany and vice versa. Recently, someone in Germany said that, what would we call this? The internal politics and as to foreign policy and internal policy have become very closely intertwined with each other. And I find that the work that you're doing in Roots is just in every way admirable. And for that reason, I invited you. I think it was extremely stimulating to everyone, the workshop that Roots gave. People are still talking about it. And so it's a pleasure to be able to present a little bit of what we do to people who know you and your world a little bit better. And I'm also very, very happy that Jarius and Natalie could be with us, because without them and people like them, everything that we're doing would be relatively meaningless. It's only if we can pass it on and create meaning that it works. And I also want to just quickly say hi to Lenka Lichtenberg, also a dear friend of mine with whom I've worked. And actually, thanks to Lenka, several years ago, I met Yair Dalal, and because of conversations with Yair Dalal, we began talking about other pictures of Israel, and that led to Yiddish Summer Weimar actually doing 2 years in a row called The Other Israel, and that led to inviting you, Hanan. So actually, Lenka, if not for you, also we wouldn't be here this evening. That's the way that chains of connections work, and that's important to see.
It's so beautiful. Thank you, Alan. I love it.
It's a
Thank
pleasure, and I'm very, very aware of chains like this in my life. There are many, many chains, things that seem like they're contingent, minor things at the time that turn into very major things. And actually, I think Judaism has something to say about this in general, about recognizing the potential of every moment. Um, I will say something about myself and then try to introduce you a little bit to the ideas of Yiddish Summer Weimar and the other music academy. We'll watch a little video trailer about a project that both Jirius and Natalia are involved with. They will say something about themselves, and then I hope that we'll have a lot of time for discussion, because what we're doing certainly raises a lot of questions. So very briefly about myself, I was born in Bloomington, Indiana in 1955. My mother comes from a Polish-Jewish family from the area near Lviv. My father comes from a Romanian or Bessarabian Jewish family from the area around Chisinau, Hebrew Chisinau. Both sides of the family had some people who had immigrated to the United States in the 20s or a little bit earlier and who had left people behind. Everyone who was left behind died in the Holocaust. And so I grew up with a very strong consciousness of what it meant to be a surviving branch of the family and pondering the question of what the Holocaust meant for human life in general. I was pretty sure that although it was a historically unique event, that there were lessons to be learned that were very important general lessons. And I wanted to understand what those lessons were. Because I was born in 55, the first 10 years of my life until 13 years until 68, I would say, I was very strongly identified with the whole idea of post-war America. We were a shining light unto the nations. We were bringing democracy everywhere. Everyone should love us. We were only a force of good in the world. Then along came the Vietnam War, and I found myself confronted in Bloomington, Indiana, with Jewish businesses that had signs on their windows that said, "America, love it or leave it." And I would go in there and say, how can a Jewish person just several years, a few decades after the war, embrace this kind of nationalism? It was the beginning of a strong period of alienation for me from both the Jewish community in Bloomington, Indiana, and also from identification with American imperialism. But I also quickly started thinking about the change that I saw in all of my neighbors. I had grown up with parents who said to me, yes, you know, you have non-Jewish neighbor friends and you trust them and you love them, but you never know, because in Germany, Jews and non-Jews lived beautifully together too, and then overnight they were enemies. Well, growing up with that consciousness as a little boy, I'm probably not the only person here who heard that growing up. It deeply undermines your fundamental social trust in the world that you're in and makes you really ask questions. Whom can you trust? Can you trust? What is trust? All of those questions. And I was really haunted by those questions. Reading a lot about collective psychology, about politics, about relations between Jews and non-Jews, very much about the Holocaust. I was in those days on a path to becoming a classical pianist. And then came 1968, and all of the value system of the United States was called into question for me. And that led, I have to go very fast forward here, that led to eventually my coming to Germany in 1987 to try to experience for myself what might be sort of leftover echoes or resonances of what I had been only reading about and seeing in films. I felt I had done all of the work outside of Germany on this subject that I possibly could. I came to Germany in 1987, was very, very surprised by what I found here. In Berlin in 1987, I entered a world where exactly those issues that I had been working with basically my whole life, where most of my friends were saying, come on, let it go, the war is over, you don't need to live inside the war, you don't need to live inside these heavy issues all the time. Actually, Berlin was focused on those very issues. I felt, wow, here's an entire city and culture that has taken on this history, and instead of avoiding it and running away from it, which I had always heard they were doing, in fact, they're going right into it and working with it in extremely interesting ways. And without intending to stay in Germany, I got drawn into this nexus of very complex working through all of those issues that I just very, very briefly touched upon. In the meantime, I had done quite a lot of work in Yiddish music, in what some people know as klezmer music. And at some point, I got invited by the city of Weimar to do a workshop there in 1998 for just a weekend. And I brought to that workshop not only Yiddish music content, but also my pedagogical ideas. My father was a philosopher of education, a psychologist of education. I had worked on several education initiatives in the United States, notably something called the Coalition of Essential Schools, in case any of you have heard of that. And I came with a whole sort of backpack full of educational methods that I wanted to try out in this workshop. And it turned out that those methods were as interesting to the people as the content itself of Yiddish. I had many people come up after that first workshop and said, oh, I thought I was coming to do a workshop in Yiddish music, but it turned out this is a workshop on learning and a workshop on social being and a workshop, and actually Yiddish music is just sort of the jumping off point for this. And that actually became a theme in the next years, where I began to realize that every time we approach something, someone, some culture that we think of as strange, whether we're attracted to it or not attracted to it, our first approach is to our own fantasy of what that is. And then when we meet the real people and the real cultures, that's the beginning of reality, of the reality principle. We actually are confronted with what reality really is and what the difference is between that and our fantasies. And that's the beginning of an amazing process, potentially, of enormous growth. So as Yiddish Summer was growing larger and larger each year and went from being a 1-week workshop to a 6-week summer workshop, to then also taking fall vacation and winter vacation and spring vacation, and people were coming back year after year. So it went from being a week-long festival to being actually a place where people were getting a significant training in their understanding of Jewish culture and Yiddish culture and Judaism, because as this was growing, of course, Yiddish culture is contextualized in Jewish life, and you only can understand Yiddish cultural expressions up to a certain point without understanding the life that goes along with that. If you want to understand the life that goes along with that, that also means, in the case of Yiddish traditional life, understanding quite a lot about the Jewish religion. So all of this began to flow together. In 2009, the city of Weimar said, look, you're using all the rental space that there is available. Maybe you'd like to have your own home here. And they offered us a 5-story old 100-year-old school building to renovate. It was a wreck, to renovate and really from the ground up. And Hanan, you experienced that place. By the way, it's come a lot further since you were there. And this was also a question of scaling up and figuring out what is it that we're doing. And I was pretty sure that I didn't want to just do a Jewish Music Academy or something focused only on Jewish content. I wanted to keep that anchor and have that be very important. But what I had learned from this whole process by now over 10 years was that it was really about an encounter between self and other. And so I call this the Other Music Academy. And in fact, it's not only about music. Music is a metaphor here for all the different nonverbal approaches that we have to each other, to understanding ourselves, and ways of connecting with each other. So I want to tell you just a little bit, this is not the right place to go into big, long philosophical discussions, at least in the introduction, but just a little bit about what motivates this, or the background. Do any of you know the book, well, some of you must, The Nature of Prejudice by Gordon Allport, written in 1954? This is in the field of social thinking, this is a very important book, and it's strange that it's hardly known anymore. I'm going to put it in chat. So Allport, by the way, was the teacher of Stanley Milgram, who went on to do the famous obedience to authority experiments using shocks and so forth. So those are more famous. And Allport was working on what was at that time called the contact theory of prejudice, meaning that one group has prejudice against another group because they just don't have enough contact with them. Well, the World War II was the first time that black soldiers and white soldiers were going to serve in the same army units in the United States. And Alport recognized a golden opportunity to test that hypothesis. So on their way in, he did various baseline studies of their level of prejudice, and then he tested them again on the way out to see whether their prejudice had been reduced by having more contact with each other. And what he found out was that it all depends upon what kind of contact that is. That in fact, for the most part, the everyday kind of contact that they had with each other had no effect on their prejudice level towards each other. But if they had been in extreme existential situations with each other, like sharing a foxhole in the middle of a freezing winter night, that changed everything. And what he realized was that prejudice lives not at the level of what we think about other people or what we believe about other people, but our kind of embodied disposition towards other people. In other words, at the level of trust. At the same level that we experience attraction or disgust or openness, it is something extremely visceral. So it boils down to, Alport finds out that this whole thing boils down to the question of, can we trust the person next to us or not? And if we can't trust them, then we have a very low tolerance of conflict. And if we can trust them, we have a high level of tolerance because we're invested in preserving that trust. So I began to think, okay, well, we're not going to create foxholes in Yiddish Summer Weimar and this kind of conflict situation. What can we do that will put people in situations where they are also confronted with whether they will trust each other, they won't trust each other? And we began to devise the idea of projects which invite people from all walks of life and very many intelligences. So I happen to be a quite verbally intelligent person, but I recognize that there are many other kinds of intelligence. There's mathematical intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, there's kinetic intelligence. And actually, I believe that all these intelligences are equally valuable. And it tends to be that only people who are verbally intelligent are taken seriously in cultural projects. So my wish was, let's figure out projects where all these kinds of intelligences are validated and where people can even learn about themselves and learn about each other. And in order to succeed in a project, they're going to depend on each other. So it's, one person's going to have the key and the other person is going to be able to open the door. No one is able to do it on their own. Everyone needs each other and needs to learn from each other in order to be able to succeed. And that's the fundamental idea of the Other Music Academy. We call it an empowerment center. And the idea of the Other Music Empowerment Academy is to create projects which empower people by bringing together artistic methods and scientific methods in the service of individual and social empowerment through basically fundamental questions of your identity and the identities of others in a platform where you have a chance to gain trust. Okay, that was the fastest I've ever done that, I want you to know. And I think maybe what would be interesting to do now, so that this isn't just talk, is to watch the video trailer of this particular project, which is called the Caravan Chamber Orchestra. And Hanan, there are a few different videos of this. I realized the one that I had sent to you was the kind of the 2.5 minute pop version of it a little bit. But in the version we're going to watch now, there's a little bit more interviewing and discussion of what the project is. It was when I was searching for that my computer crashed just before we started here. So let's hope that that was worth it. And I'm hoping that some of you will have some questions and reactions to what I've been talking about in the discussion period. And I'm really looking forward to your getting a chance to meet Natalie and Jirius. But let's see if we can see this film now. I'm going to put it up there. It's about 6 minutes long. A moment. Okay. Do you see what looks like branches?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start the video and please, Hanan, put your thumb up if you hear the sound, okay?
Okay.
Here we go.
what we're trying to do in Caravan is bring people together. And usually many people divide music into styles. Like they say, okay, there's the style of Arabic music, there's the style of East European Jewish music, and there's the style of whatever, European music or different national traditions. In the end, if you look at these things closer, you will almost always find a common repertoire. And that's actually exactly what people are about as well. You know, we live very often similar lives, but with different styles. And that's wonderful. And the result is actually extremely exciting music, because these guys that are here really want to learn from each other.
Things in Israel are very much inside categories, not only musically, everything. And here you come to different kind of surface, and it's just like, oh, okay, this music is very similar in the rhythm to Arabic music, for example, or music that you love because of the harmony of or the melody.
Excuse me. Are you seeing the video or are you only hearing the music?
We're only hearing the music.
Let's try this again. I'm very sorry. If you don't mind, good for calling that to my attention. That's what I meant at the beginning. I'm going to try one more time. That's a pity, but I think this should work now. Let's try again. And now give me a thumbs up again for both video and audio, please.
Okay.
You have video and audio?
No, only video. Only audio, sorry. Only audio.
What is going on? This has never happened to me before, ever, with I don't know how many Zooms. Let me try one more time. Excuse me. I'm co-host, right? Hanan.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Try one more thing. If this doesn't work, then I will probably just refer you to a video to watch, unfortunately. Maybe this has something to do with the fact that we're recording. I don't know. But we'll try. Because I see it's not letting me, it says I can't optimize it for the video clip, and that's usually possible to do. I'm going to try one more thing. Let's see if I can do this from the website, since it's not letting me. Hanan, when we first tested it, you were able to see the video and hear it, right?
Yes, as far as I remember.
Okay, so we're going to try one more time.
Alan, is the video as a file you are putting it?
Yeah, I used the file. I mean, I've done this 100 times.
Yeah,
I don't know why this isn't working this time.
better than YouTube, but maybe YouTube.
Yeah. Well, we're just going to try this one more time, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we'll move on. So, hang on one second.
Looks like we've lost Alan.
His connection might be bad.
Okay, we'll give him a minute, see what happens.
Meanwhile, I could try to show the video.
Should I make you a co-host, Andreas?
I think I can. Yeah, why not? Let's try that. Like, then we don't lose time.
Okay.
Let's see. What do you see right now?
We see the branches with the
Okay, that's a good sign. But possibly I haven't. And now?
we see the branches and we see the words Caravan Chamber Orchestra Germany 2019, but I don't hear anything.
There's always something wrong. Okay, 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Let's try this again.
Remember to share the sound, Andreas, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Yes, here we go. All right, for me it also says it can't, but let's see. Okay, 1 second. Now you see the cat?
Cat, yes, we see the cat.
Good. Okay, let's see. Music and
Confused to hear.
everything good?
Good.
What we're trying to do in Caravan is bring people together. And usually many people divide music into styles. Like they say, okay, there's the style of Arabic music, there's the style of East European Jewish music, and there's the style of whatever, European music or different national traditions. In the end, if you look at these things closer, you will almost always find a common repertoire. And that's actually exactly what people are about as well. You know, we live very often similar lives, but with different styles. And that's wonderful. And the result is actually extremely exciting music because these guys that are here really want to learn from each other.
Things in Israel are very much inside categories, not only musically, everything. And here you come to different kind of surface and it's just like, oh, okay, this music is very similar in the rhythm to Arabic music, for example, or music that you love because of the harmony of or the melody. It's just only the title is different. So I think we're using the music as a tool to create a musical community, which created something magical, I can say.
Wunderschönen Abend mit dem Caravan Chamber Orchestra. Viel Spaß!
The highest impact or what you feel from this youngness of the people is that there's a lot of energy. In the end, it's the music that's fun, and I always enjoy the concerts so much and I forget about everything else and I'm just with the others and just with the music.
We have people from different backgrounds, different cultures. So there's the Germans, people from Israel, some of them are Jewish and some of them are Arab, but they all have a different relationship to to time and to music. From the very beginning, it was sounding really good. When people can speak the language of music through their instruments, through their voices, through their bodies, you know, through their minds, their hearts, they can find, you know, they can find something to talk about.
I think the main difference is the way we work. It's a very democratical, I think, orchestra. Here you really have your spot. You really feel like together with Ilya and with Jarius and with all the other musicians, that we can really speak music. And what we're making here is a really modern, traditional orchestra that, you know, celebrates all the different kinds of cultures in the world.
Is Alan back with us?
I don't think so, because it went down from 21 to 20, and it's still 20.
Oh God. Okay, 1 second. Let me call him.
Okay. In the meanwhile, Natalie, were you supposed to speak? And Jarius, were you supposed to speak?
It's just so nice to see to see all these memories from the beautiful tour.
Yeah, I'm very emotional right now, honestly. Thank you for that, for just letting me watching it again. I think I don't know what to say, because I have so much emotions after watching that, and very good emotions and very good memories. That I think we can share with you. I think we should answer questions or something like that. But
Well, I see Alan is back. Alan, what's planned for now?
Well, I had invited Natalie and Jarius both to say something about themselves, if they like to, and to talk a little bit about what their experience of this project was, and if it affects them in their daily lives now, having gone through this. I didn't prepare them for this, because I wanted this to be really honest, and what it is, and not an advertisement or, you know, sales pitch for what it is that we're doing. So, but if I throw a keyword out there, I guess maybe the keyword would be trust, since I you know, basically made that the focus, trust as a way of sort of relating to the other, and other Music Academy projects such as the Caravan Orchestra as a way of building trust. But if that's not a good way of starting for you, either one of you, I just, you know, I completely trust however you'd like to start. So maybe, Jarius, you want to start saying something, and after that, Natalie, maybe that will inspire you. Shall we do it that way?
okay.
Let's go like that. Okay.
This is going to jump to the water. So, beside my educational background, just a little bit about myself. I come from somehow or so-called political activist family, especially from my mom's side, less than that side. But why I'm saying this? Because Caravan is to talk more about the political thing of Caravan, not the political between Israelis and Palestinians. Just as a project, it was some kind of normal continuation for any kind of activity that included Jewish and Arabs in it. Within, I was exposed to it by my family activism, or by my mom, or by the values I grew up in my family. It wasn't something super new, weird for me. It was something natural. However, musically, it was new because any musician is looking for community. Any musician is looking for feeling of belonging to something, and it's difficult sometimes for any kind of person, especially for, I think, people in Israel. And in short, Caravan is becoming a place. It's becoming a place that you go there and you speak about many things you want, and you experiencing many different kind of music culture you want, and musical techniques, etc., etc. So this continuation was really good for me, and it fits my musical life as a grown-up person. Shifting from my 20s to my 30s, becoming to know what is things I do in life. And I'm so happy that Caravan is part of it. I have to say that when Caravan was offered to me, I was coming back from the States doing my master's, and I was really in shock. And I was with Dr. Abigail Wood going to Jerusalem for our research. And she told me about Caravan, and I rolled my eyes like 10 times. I'm just like, another Jewish Arab music ensemble. I mean, we saw a lot of this. My brother was in this. It's beautiful, it's nice, but it faded out. Every project, it faded out. I didn't want to be in something cliche because I was aware of the nature of politics in this kind of project. But anyway, I was so happy that I was mistaken, because the first day, which was 20 July 2017, when 30 musicians were, of course I remember, when 30 musicians met in the same room, I started my undergrad studies in Haifa. I knew it's going to be something revolutionary. It's going to be something different, and I found a new home. And I'm so happy that I said yes, and it broke everything I knew about mixed ensembles, because for many reasons, and I will keep this for the questions. But musically, just when the musician started to play, I felt like there's something here that it's worth to give your time for it. It was to give your energy, and it's going to make you happy in the most basic level of happiness. I want to give time also for Natalie, but what I wanted just to say, and as an opening, that Caravan Orchestra is such a great project for many kind of reasons. But if we want to talk about music and this kind of mixed orchestra, I mean, politics are all over us all the time, even if we don't want to speak about them in much more grounded terms of speaking about politics, they exist there. And what is really rare about this kind of circumstances that happen in Caravan, that the agency is different. The musicians have agency for themselves. The musical director have agency on this. And you feel, I mean, when Effie say democratic, Effie, the percussionist, say in the trailer, it's democratic orchestra, not only in the sense that it's democratic different from Western classical orchestra, but it's not you only ignore identities, but you also address what each individual musical and cultural identity within the orchestra itself. And I think it's very important, because it's very hard to find an institution musical institution that will support approach like this. So I'm gonna wrap my introduction. What I think, and I believe that, for example, the other music academy is offering is not only space to create musical community, which is something important, but it's also creating a place where you can address these musical topics, where you have the freedom to pick any kind of repertoire you want. Me and Ilya would pick it, and we experiment with it. And they offer this as a project in the context, or as a physical place. Go there and to practice, to spend many hours, and then you create this something, as I say, magical. I mean, this is the word that always resonates in my head.
Thank you. I can throw in something here before you go, Natalie, or are you ready to say something now?
Course,
yeah. Well, in the in the brief description of this talk, I talked about building bridges being a common metaphor for intercultural or transcultural work. But actually, if we think of that, it implies that there's something, a disconnection that you start with, right? It implies something missing that you have to connect with the bridge. And I think that starting with that metaphor already, gets us off on the wrong foot. And I'm interested in metaphors which imply the deep historical, cultural connections that are actually already there. One of the metaphors that I've been thinking about lately has to do with the ocean and waves in the ocean. You may know that there are many, many levels of waves on the ocean. There's the waves on the surface that are caused by wind, and then there are deeper waves. There are waves caused by tides. There are waves that are caused by the reflections of land masses. And for example, the Polynesians, for a good 1,000 years, were able to sail across 1,000 miles of open ocean because they could read the waves. They could see that this level of wave is a reflection of an island that's 700 miles away from us. But they could sense exactly where that island is by reading that wave. And when we listen to music, all music is like this. All music has bounced off of various cultures and various times and places. And when you listen to music and you're with an ear to reading those waves, you suddenly realize this is not about learning to come to appreciate Arabic music, even though I come from European music. It's learning to understand the reflections of Arabic music in European music and the reflections of European music in Arabic music. It's learning to understand what we already have in common. And if you think about that in terms of the metaphor of trust at the beginning, what happens to you when you meet somebody that is a friend of yours and you find out they're actually a cousin? Well, all of a sudden something comes over you in that moment that you think, wow, there's another level of relatedness here. Even though the actual time you spent with them isn't different, but your sense of your belonging to them is different. And that's what we would like to achieve through the Caravan Orchestra and through the projects that we do. This is quite a bit different than, for example, Barambaev's Divan Orchestra, where he also brings different people together to play Beethoven. But here it has to do with, we want people to go into their own musical heritages and to discover the common dimensions with each other's musical heritages through this. That's the idea. And so for me, this metaphor of the ocean is a good metaphor for that, ocean waves. Okay, maybe that's enough. Natalie, please jump in here.
Okay.
Anything you like to say?
Yeah, I have many things to say. First of all, I want to say sorry about my English. I know I have a lot of mistakes, so if you don't understand something, just let me know. But I will try. I do my best. So first of all, I want to say that for me, the Caravan was very, very special thing because I grew up in a Russian environment, in the Soviet Union. I was growing up not on Jewish music, even though my mother is Jewish and I'm coming from very religious family from my mother's side. I grew up on, classical music. I was a classical tuba player. I used to play from notes and nothing like, klezmer music. So for me, it was very nice to discover new styles of music, not only about the people. So this is the idea why I joined the Caravan Orchestra. When I started the project, the first year, it was amazing for me because again, I love people. Doesn't matter where they from. So it was very nice for me to meet the people and to talk the same language, because I really think that music is really the same language that we can talk. And what I like in this project, that it was so many different people, and it was all the time when people asking me about the Caravan Orchestra, there is zero politics inside, and this is what I like. We don't talk politics. We don't talk about, conflicts and hate. And even if we do talk about it, I think it's coming from a very pure place, because we know each other already through the music. We connect already. We love each other through this thing. So I think it's a good place also to talk about different things like politics. For example, I think what in the first time that this thing about politics came from, it was from the first caravan when we met some Arab guy in the streets. And we go, like, I think we were a group of 7 people, and they ask us, where are we from? And one of the guys said, we're from Palestine. And we're like, what? I'm from Israel. I'm not from Palestine. But, and you know, I was thinking about it, and I realized it's okay. Like, we're still friends. We love each other. It's okay. It's okay. I can understand, and I can talk with him about it. Why he said that he is from Palestine, because I love him. I appreciate him. So I think it's a good music, as you said, Alan. It's connect us, so we can also talk about different things about it after that. And that's it. That's what I want to say about it.
Well, I want to say that you know, I'm a little bit spread out, a little bit thin now because we're doing a lot of projects, and I try to get to know all of the people and spend time with all of the people. But I'm one of the things, I guess the greatest joy of my life now is that there are people around me in this project who have become so unbelievably strong that, like, when I completely fall over, they just step right up, like Andreas just did. And you know, when I lost my connection, he just smoothly took over. So given that kind of stability and the organization of like-minded and very strong and competent people, I still have opportunities to meet the people. And I just have to say, I mean, I fall in love with everybody in these projects. When you see young people like Jarius and Natalie, and you see them working and how hard they're working and what they're doing and how much they're giving and how much creativity there is there. I mean, it is, you have to fall in love with that. I mean, it is exactly that atmosphere of trust that I was talking about, which comes not from starting in a common position of peril, but in a common position of really deeply shared joy. And maybe that's an alternative that we have there, and it's probably a luxury that we have in Weimar. I kind of think, to be honest, that Weimar is a place, we've talked about this before, Hanan, that Weimar is a little bit like, you know, what do you call this, in the middle of the desert?
Wow.
Yes, exactly, an oasis. It's a little bit because it's sort of out of place and out of time. It's a place where people and cultures in conflict can come and share sides of themselves in Weimar that actually they don't feel as free to share where they come from. This has happened, interestingly, with I won't mention names here, but with some very Orthodox Jewish women who sang for us in Weimar. And the father of one of them came over to me while she was doing it and said, I want you to know that I haven't heard her sing since she was 12 years old. She never sings in public. And so I went and spoke to her afterwards, and I said, why did you do that? I hope you didn't feel that I put you pressure. She said, no, I looked deeply inside myself, and I felt it was the right thing to do in this situation, and I trust myself, so I went with it. And I can tell you that the people who witnessed that and experienced it were deeply, deeply moved that she felt free to do that, and she was moved to experience that herself. So Hanan, I think you had an experience too in Yiddish Summer Weimar that it went deeper than you anticipated it would, right?
Yeah. Actually, it was the first time that my Palestinian partner listened to me speak about Judaism.
Wow.
Even though we'd spoken together tens of times before.
So what were the conditions that allowed that to happen?
You're very right in what you said, that being in a different, strange, neutral environment, it's the same reason why many peace groups have to go to Cyprus or to America for Israelis and Palestinians to talk to each other. To do it here, the context is full of, like Jerry said earlier, full of the categories you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Categories.
Yeah. Well, it's probably also related to the fact that I'm not a German person myself. I'm not even a German Jew. And so actually, even the existence of this thing in Weimar is already framed as somehow displaced. I mean, it calls the very idea of identity into question. Richard Rosenfeld asked me whether we've ever collaborated with Dan Kahn. Dan Kahn learned Yiddish in Yiddish Summer Weimar. And Dan Kahn came to Berlin for the first time because I invited him to stay in this apartment that I am Zooming from right now. And so he came and stayed here for a year, and he had an experience similar to mine of thinking that he was coming as a tourist and then realizing that there was a lot of deep work that he was going to be able to do here. Dan is a regular teacher and colleague in Yiddish Summer Weimar, and I enormously admire his work on all kinds of levels. So maybe this is a good moment to open it up for further questions. I think, I mean, we have hours of wonderful videos that we could show you. I want to emphasize that not all of our projects by any means are music projects. Our projects are almost always focused on places where there seems to be a boundary between self and other. But that boundary can be a gender boundary, it can be an age boundary, it can be a physical ability boundary. All of those boundaries where we look across the boundary and we feel that the person on the other side is not quite human like we are, that's where we're drawn to those boundaries to see how we can rehumanize that situation, is what I would say. And like I said, sometimes that happens with music. There's a wonderful project that we have, which is called Open Pavilion, that simply involves building something together, where people get together once a year and they build something together. And we don't have time for this now, but a wonderful video trailer of these 12, 13-year-old girls who are picking up a power saw for the first time, and they're being taught to use it by women carpenters who are basically showing them that they don't have to be afraid of that. And just because they're girls, that doesn't mean that they, shouldn't be thinking of themselves as people who can do this. And you can just see, one thing that's so inspiring to me is how quickly people change and move when they're given the opportunity to do it. You don't have to push people hard. You just have to show them that this opportunity is there and model for them openness. And actually what Natalie said at the beginning, I also think is the key. It's very, very helpful if you have a basic disposition of liking or loving people or trusting people. If you bring that to a group of people, it creates an atmosphere where everybody is set at ease because they realize they're not there to be judged or to be criticized. They're there to be related to. And I believe that being related to and recognized and seen and acknowledged as a human being for who you are, not have to pretend that you're somewhere else, is the deepest need that we have, actually. And when we meet people who are ready to acknowledge us that way and see us and know us, well, we open up to that. Questions? Questions to any of us or discussions? Very open to anything at this point. Don't be shy, please. Doesn't have to be questions. It can be anything. Reflections can also be about your own experience or maybe thoughts or feelings that came up while you were watching this. I mean, we don't have to be clever in this situation. We just have to be ourselves.
Well, I can say that this is Richard Rosenfeld.
Hi, Richard.
So yes, so we're the people who met Daniel Kahn several times when he came to Ithaca. But I've seen a video that I posted online between Jews and Arabs in Israel singing a peace song together. And I've sent it years ago. I sent it to people, my friends and family, because I was so moved by how people could join together and make music together in Hebrew and Arabic and go back and forth between the two languages. I just thought it's wonderful what you're doing. How many people come to your Weimar caravan?
Yiddish Summer. Well, Yiddish Summer is the summer festival, and that's open for everyone. You are very welcome to come and join that. We give workshops, weekly workshops for people of all levels. lasting 4 or 5 weeks. We even have a form for this during Corona period with appropriate social distancing, as well as concerts and workshops in music, workshops in language, workshops in history and culture. We get people from 26 different countries all around the world coming and joining us. And each summer, I would say we get something like between 200 and 300 people in the workshops, which if you add that up over 20 years, I think that's close to something like 5,000 to 6,000 people who have attended this. A large chunk of those people have come for 10 or 11 or 12 years in a row and have turned into who they are by being there. And I would say we reach, I don't know, Andreas, what's our 5,000 to 10,000 people each summer in terms of audience?
Like in normal years, which are not Corona, then we have mostly like 10,000, sometimes more.
Something
People
like that.
attending concerts
Exactly.
and all sorts of events. Yeah.
Exactly. And I should say that part of the idea of Yiddish Summer Weimar is that every year or every 2 years, we choose a special subject. And that's a kind of a research topic. And I invite artists and scientists and people from all walks of life to come together to work on that subject together. So also there, this goes back to what I was talking about pedagogical ideas at the beginning. I believe strongly that the best way to be a teacher is to model learning. So we try to learn with and in front of our students rather than to tell them what we know, and bring them along. And there are all kinds of levels of involvement in this. You know, really, you can come to the festival for a week and just have fun and see concerts every day, or you can come and, you know, change your life in various ways if you are ready for that level of involvement. I will put in here the websites if you want to explore that in the chat. Yeah, because there's so much to say about all this. Rachel Cohen says, if I understood correctly, beginning you were saying that being in tough situations with people from the other group where we are forced to rely on them has a deep impact. Can any of you please share a moment where you had to learn how to trust the other while playing music and how that felt for you? That's an interesting question. That would be, I think, to either Jarius or Natalie. Was there ever a situation, can you think of a situation where while playing music you had to learn to trust the person that you were playing with? Like that there was some issue of trust that playing music helped you get through? Do I understand that question correctly? Yeah.
I'm just reading it again just to know what I answered correctly. I mean, yeah, this is the whole thing. It's about the trust in different level, because sometimes you have new participants and you have the same participants every year. So we create. I mean, I think I just did a presentation about it last week here in Critical Studies about improvisation in caravan orchestra and who's more comfortable to improvise the music and who is less comfortable. And I was paying attention a lot to that gender thing last year. And I'm looking at it, I'm asking musicians how they felt about it. So, and we always create, I mean, the project started in 2017, so it's 3 years or 4 years right now. Every year we develop the techniques of gaining trust in this and making the space where we rehearse as a safe space, etc., etc. What's happening is that we go into the music immediately. Sometimes we don't know who's from whom, like who's from the German group and who's from the Israeli group. So I think when we have, it's more democratic place of everybody's musician. And I'm trying to remember that there's something distinct about if there's some problem with the trust. On my behalf, I make sure that not only to conduct the group as a group as in summer prep only, but even to talk personally to each one of them, at least in the first week in Haifa, in music stuff or social stuff. Or just to feel how everybody is feeling or everybody is comfortable, because we have to spend many times together, and I want them to enjoy it as well. So the trust is musically or sometimes different things. We had participant last year from the choir. I love to call it the voice ensemble. She was very afraid of leaving Israel and being in Germany and not to know what to do after rehearsal. And it was really crisis with her until me and somebody else, we pay attention to this and we need to speak to her. But so you have these minor things that you need to do to gain the trust of each other. But generally, the atmosphere in rehearsals is very chill and beautiful, and we are smiling people. So it's always starting a good way.
Traditions. How about
Yeah,
you,
I think that because we don't, it's not like a regular orchestra that we have sheets and we have notes and everybody knows what to do, and we need to trust only the conductor in other orchestras. In the caravan orchestra, I think we need to trust each other as a good musician, and we need to trust that, yeah, okay, so you don't really play the violin that I know, and you have like the Arab violin, and I don't know your technique, but I trust you that you're a good musician, and you're gonna bring your side and your music to this whole beautiful thing. So I think this is the trust that I can talk about.
We have had situations in the workshops where Israeli participants, workshops are not the caravan orchestra, but it's workshops during Yiddish summer, are shocked to find out that the person they're sitting next to is a Syrian refugee, and vice versa, and where they will come up to me afterwards with tears in their eyes and say, I can't believe that I just made music sitting next to, I thought this guy, I was sitting there thinking the whole time how cute he is. I can't believe that this is a Syrian refugee that I was supposed to be afraid of, and we just had such a great time together, this kind of thing. But also, something that I'm hearing from both Juris and Natalie, and I'm not a young Israeli person or an Arab or a Palestinian, so I just don't know at all how widespread this is. And I please don't think that I'm making light in any way of the conflict that I know is there. But one of the other projects that I was involved with involved the Voices of Peace Choir, which is a choir that was led for many years by Yahya Dalal in the Arab Jewish Cultural Center of Tel Aviv Jaffa, together with a choir in Weimar, from Weimar. And I composed music for these choirs, and I got to know these young women very, very well. And they were between the ages of, I think the youngest was 11 or 12, up until about 16 or 17. And what was amazing about them was that they were friends with each other, as far as I could tell, completely independently of what their political and ethnic affiliation was. And there were a couple of times when there were some real crises that came up, including political crises that were unfortunately caused by the state of Israel, which basically they were forced to take a position on something that was designed to polarize them. And in order to be able to leave Israel to come to Germany, they had to take a position on this thing, which, as I said, was designed to polarize them. And I was crying that had been done to them. And they were just barely a little bit annoyed by it. And I said, how can you take this so lightly? I find this so insulting, what was just done to you. And I said, oh, Alan, we live with this every minute here, And the generation that did this to us, they completely screwed it up. We can't take that seriously or expect any help from them. So, what we know is we're friends with each other. We know each other. We're connected to each other, and that's what we care about, and the rest of it is water off our backs. Wow, that was amazing. I mean, so I don't know how we can generalize that, if that can be generalized, but I do feel that sometimes the friendships and the strengths and the love that young people can have for each other just because they're young and they're in love with life, and they realize they're in a crazy political construction that just doesn't make sense, and they just say, well, then let's just stick to ourselves here. And maybe that is going to form a core that something can come from in the future. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that, Hanan? I'm interested to know.
Too complicated to talk about on one foot.
Okay, okay.
I'll pass.
Well, supposedly you can sum up the Torah in on one foot. Is this more complicated than Torah? Yes? Okay. Okay. Well,
Can I comment about that, Alan? About more political thing that I think it's important in all this kind of projects. I mean, me and Natalie, as you mentioned, Han, we are in an ensemble called Tijual, and Tijual is actually graduate of Caravan who would like to continue to do something like this and to meet with each other and to play music like this. And we don't have a producer to send us to Germany every month to do this. So I mean, but to keep the connection between us, the participants who are in Israel. And we experience the differences in the context of playing, we are playing klezmer music and Arabic music in Tijual, and we are playing it in Haifa. And we see the differences as me and Natalie and, me and Afi and another violin player who all of them were in Caravan. We are running the ensemble just to have this experience around the year again and to play Jewish and Arabic music. I can't tell you how much difficult it is to promote concert to us, how much difficult to change the words. The first time we met, I mean, like we said, and I will speak about my political view generally, why I think Caravan, it is something I like very much and it's different than anything else, and how it's connected to our musical activity while being physically in Israel. That we don't talk about coexistence. I mean, we exist next to each other, obviously. There's a term that I work with it in any context I'm doing it, while I'm forced to do something political, that I don't wish all the time, by the way, is to talk about the term shared society. And shared society is extremely important to talk about it as citizens, Palestinians living in Israel, and Jewish people, and everybody who's living in Israel who doesn't belong to these kind of ethnic groups. That, yes, I mean, there is a Jewish city and Jewish and Arab village next to each other. And let's imagine they meet in musical context together, but what happened next? I mean, what is the point of playing Jewish music and Palestinian music? And when I say Palestinian music, I mean also Syrian music, Lebanese music, any kind of music that surround this region. And let's focus in one region, for example, the Galilee. I mean, we meet in Haifa. We then go to Weimar, and that is great break from politics sometimes, at least for anybody who's from Israel, just to feel to be only musician. But when we go back to our own reality and want to continue music making, we need to understand that the term shared society will speak about, yes, you are right-wing, you are left-wing, you are neutral, and you are Jewish, you are Palestinian. How we learn that to accept each other and to live with each other, not in this specific context only, but for example, bringing the music of each other, it's a one way of living the shared society. And this is the solution, by the way, in this crucial time, in my eyes, that we share same physical space, but we don't know about each other anything. This is a problem. But if we share the same physical space and we start to learn about each other, that's already process. We don't have to change our political views in case for each individual one. We don't have to change maybe place of living, but to know each other, it's much more important. So this is a dream to happen. And this is what happened while we were in Israel. And as a political activist and as somebody who's fighting for Jewish Arab brotherhood, as my grandfather did back in the 50s, it's not something that I started in new. It's also nice to go to Germany and just disconnect yourself a little bit from this and to think about music, to think about yourself as a musician, as a composer. And this is, I think, what it's amazing for the Palestinian participants in the group who play Middle Eastern music, that yes, you have much more possibilities. You are you are deserved to arrive to music festival and to have a stage and to have microphones and not have flags on the stage, and just to think about yourself as think about your musical identity. And this is great. And this is great that also that the word Palestinian, it's not becoming, it's not a word, or Jewish generally, that it's not becoming words that will make you feel uncomfortable. I mean, I'm not nationalist person, I'm socialist, but I don't know how it will fit in the States right now here. But my point is that there's nothing wrong for Palestinian to play Jewish music, or for Israeli who never say the word Palestinian to say Palestinian. I mean, we exist next to each other. So I think that's already a process. Do we, me and Natalie, speak about our Palestinian and Jewish identity all the time in politics? No, we speak about other things.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so that's why what I think about the caravan, why I think it's so important, not only because of the music. The music is the base for everything, but because we're staying so much time together, we spend so much time together. It's not only the concerts, it's not only the rehearsal that we come to play, okay, our music and the Jewish music, and that's it. And we go. We actually have the opportunity to talk to each other. After that, we have this base of the music, and we already connected to each other. We have it's a great opportunity to actually to understand each other and to have a conversation about different things. And that's why I think the caravan is so important, because we are staying together. We're like one big family for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's not only that. It's not only we're playing music. We actually getting to know each other through the music, but also through other things.
The getting to know each other, for me, I want to frame that in this ocean waves metaphor again, rather than building bridges metaphor, because maybe all of you know this, and I'm the only person who grew up with a crazy picture of this. But when I met Yair Dalal in 2016, when I was already 61 years old, it was the first time in my life that I learned that the Arabic, classical Arabic music culture of Iraq consisted 95% of Jewish musicians. And that when those musicians left Iraq to come to Israel, where they overnight lost status, because basically the Israelis didn't recognize that what they were doing was valuable. They represented, even though they were Jews, they represented the culture of the official enemy. And so they went from being idols of their society to being taxi drivers overnight, supposedly having arrived in their homeland. That Iraq lost 95% of its classical music culture in one blow, which is equivalent to what happened in Germany in the 30s, right? And we're all highly aware of what that meant, that Jewish musicians and artists and intellectuals and so forth left Germany. But to recognize that around the world that Jewish musicians tend to play the music of the culture that they live in, there's a term for that, we call that embedded. And that this is a deep part of Jewish identity, to be playing the music of the other in which they live. For me, this was a revolutionary moment to recognize. And it made me realize, well, when I first came to Germany in 1987, I was learning German in the Goethe Institute. And there were a bunch of Palestinians in the class with me back then. And, we told each other who we were. And I felt, a kind of a chill wind go through the room when I said I was an American Jew. And during the breaks, I would go into the recreation where there was a piano. And as mentioned, I'm a classical pianist. I would sit there and play Bach. Not religious music of Bach, just the piano inventions and things like that. And at a certain point, this group of Palestinian guys who were in my class used to come in there and sit and listen to me practicing every day. And they didn't ask me, and I didn't ask them. And at the end of the week, they came up to me and they said, "Can we ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." They said, "Didn't you say you're Jewish?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "So why do you play Christian music every day?" Now that was amazing to think of Bach through their ears as Christian music. And when Yair told me that the Iraqi Jews were playing Arabic music, I realized, oh yeah, it's exactly the same thing. Inside of Iraqi culture, that wouldn't have been seen as a strange thing, just as I don't think it's weird that Rubinstein plays Bach. But when you're on the outside, you can see that as something which is strange. And those moments where your identity gets reframed because you get to see yourself through the eyes of an outsider, those are the moments that I live for. And those are not just intellectual moments, those are profoundly transformative moments that happen when somebody sings a melody that you thought was yours and they think it's theirs, and all of a sudden you realize that you both think it's yours and it is both of yours. You know, those are amazing moments. Some of the most Arabic sounding melodies that the Caravan Orchestra plays, where you don't go through it, are actually very famous Jewish klezmer melodies that the group intentionally plays with those things by making like classic Jewish sounding melodies, making it sound Arabic and vice versa.
It reminds me, Alan, of the opening tune of last year, the wedding dance composed by Asir Rahbani in the 1960s. I didn't keep the same thing. And Abigail told me, does Asi was a Jewish composer? She said it in ironic. It's like, no, it's Lebanese music, but he composed it for the clarinet. So, but I want to say something. I want to comment about, sorry, I spoke a lot today, but I want Natalie to say something about Bach. There was some kind of, excuse me about my words, a Bach image in Caravan, just people, Arab participants and Jewish Israeli participants. I'm sorry just to categorize, but just too detailed how many people from the Israeli side went back home with books of Bach chorales. I mean, Natalie can speak about it.
Yeah, I just walked through the music store and I bought a choral of Bach book, and every 3 minutes that we had, I'm like, oh my God, you sing soprano, come here. You sing alto, come here. And we just had the groups and we sing chorales together. So that was like a really nice thing.
Well, one of the things going on in Yiddish Summer Weimar, I have to introduce a teeny little bit of theory here. There's an ethnomusicologist who talks about participatory ways of making music versus presentational ways of making music, right? A presentational way is like playing a concert, and a participatory way is a sing-along. And in Jewish music, the loss of Yiddish culture has led to the danger that the presentational part of this is disconnected from the common cultural participatory level of it. And so we've been trying to restore that participatory level to kind of create a language, a common language. It's a little bit like the Hebrew language in Israel, I think, of like, let's all learn to speak this language in the first generation, and by the second or the third generation we'll have poets in it. Something like that. In modern Hebrew, I'm talking about, if I understand that correctly. I'm sorry if I have a wrong picture of that. Let's see. Why did I want to bring that up? Because there are 35,000 people in amateur choirs in Thuringia. So in the state where Weimar is located, you know, Natalie is talking about 4-part chorales and why, you know, you can just go to the music store and pick this up. I mean, that's participatory culture there. That they grow up with 4-part singing like this, and they do it every Sunday in the church, and 35,000 people who are in amateur choirs doing this kind of thing. So, you know, we're trying to also create this kind of participatory culture, and it's funny that you picked up on that from
that's funny. Like, we're talking about Jewish and Arab music, and in the end, we all sing in a choral music, you know.
Right.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, we've been here for some time now. We don't want to take too much of your time.
Any last questions?
I would have a question of the people who are listening, because I haven't gotten too much of a sense of your reaction to the things we've been saying here. it would be nice to have just a little bit of reaction from some of you, like I found this interesting, or this wasn't that interesting, or I learned this, or I didn't learn that, or I was touched by it, or even if you would just be willing to say one sentence, and don't worry about my feeling or us feeling judged or something like that. If you would be willing, some of you would be willing to do that, it would be nice to hear.
Oh, for me, it's all very, very strange. I'm 100% in favor of anything that brings peace and brings people together. But I'm one of the estimated 4% of the population with a brain that does not process music at all. The difference between Jewish music and non-Jewish music saved my life.
Okay.
I was dancing from the first vibrations.
That's good. Dancing is very good.
I'm here in my chair, but I was wiggling and moving, and different parts of me were keeping different rhythms. But what the last comments have reinforced for me, I have been a member of a church choir that has not been able to sing for almost a year now. And I profoundly miss that. But I also realize that those of us who are in that church choir are not of a common political persuasion, but we love the music and we delight in each other through the music. And I don't know, I'm also going to inquire of there is a Jewish family just up the street and over the hill from us. And I'm going to question about issues of music and interaction. I mean, we've had seders with them, and there's been a good deal of interaction. And there's a long history to it that I won't go into, but just listening to it, what you've been saying has helped to sort of spell this out, both in terms of the musical dynamic, but also in terms of the interpersonal dynamic. And find something that really brings people together that they're turned on to, and all of a sudden the possibility of being turned on to each other opens up. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to say, Hanan, my takeaway from the exposure that I've had to roots, which has not been very deep, I know, but I'll tell you what my takeaway was. And actually what I admire so much about Roots is that I say to people, this is an organization that recognizes that the conflict is very, very, very deep. And you can't think your way out of that conflict by just willing your way out. And that if there is going to be a good solution, it's going to start by both sides deeply humanizing and understanding the humanity of the other side and connecting with that and actually advocating for the humanity of the other side. And that's kind of what I think we're talking about here in music. This is a way in which that kind of connection gets reinforced. And because music is, not language, it offers us an opportunity to steer around some of the, the roadblocks. And suddenly we find ourselves apparently able to negotiate something that seemed like it was not negotiable. And now we've learned that we can. So now can we do that in other areas where we thought it was impossible? Something like that. But by the way, and I think, I guess Jarius and Natalie will agree with this. The political side of this, or the political social thinking side of this, that isn't front and center in our projects. That's something that you've probably never even heard me talk about this before, right, Jarius and Natalie? Because I'm trying not to dump that baggage onto the people. I want them to come to the project because they're attracted to the project and they're in it, and to discover it, and not to enact my picture of what the project is about. That's not my goal.
And I think it's a great, Ellen, that we have this opportunity to not to focus on something that, I mean, me and Natalie, we took as a profession to be musician, and to have this thing. I think my last comment is about it is like, it will always be around us, the political thing, but it's nice to be sometimes in context that it's not the main theme of this. I can say that this gave me so much repertoire to practice and to develop. That I love. Certainly, I was in some place of my life just like I want to have different repertoire that I'm able to play on the buzuk, and this is just, I think, on the most personal level, just gave me place of like, I have different niche now. I have something else to play, or not something else, something extra to my own musical identity.
Well, I want to thank both of you, Darius and also Natalia, because every time I walked into the rehearsal room, you just came up to me with so much openness and warmth. And for a young woman to come up to an older man and be as relaxed and cool as you were, Natalia, was wonderful. And it was like, wow, great. We're really, she sees me just as a person here. And same thing with you, Jarius. I mean, feel like we like, I don't know, the openness that was in that room. You just walk into that room and you just swept into the openness of the atmosphere, and I always felt welcome there. And I guess I want to thank Andrea Schmidtges on this point for being a great colleague, and for being, boy, if you ever want somebody on your side fighting for you to make something happen that the whole world is telling you can't do, that's the guy to do it, really. I mean, next to my mother, he can make anything happen.
Thanks, Andreas. I mean, yeah, the hard job work that Andreas do, and then
unbelievable.
And it message that me and Natalie missed our flight.
Oh my God!
So it's
we have two more people here wanting to ask questions. Jolene and Diane.
Please.
Yeah.
Diane, and then Jolene, you wanted to say something?
Yes. My name is Diane Browsey, and I'm an American from a Christian heritage. Went to the Middle East on an Arab-American friendship tour at 19, and now at 76. And I realized that I felt called to help create peace, but it was way beyond any understanding I had at that point. Still is, really. But I've become a Sufi, a Mevlevi Sufi, which means I'm a whirling dervish. And in our group, that's worldwide, following Rumi, the poet. Most of us are Westerners, but there are some people in Israel and in Palestine who turn and teach turning. And it's a wonderful way to musically and rhythmically tune into a way of being together. Most, I would say, probably a third of all the whirling dervishes in America are Jewish.
Wow.
And we never fight about all that stuff, but we turn together and learn to not run over each other on a turning floor. So it's been a good experience for me, and one of the ways that I feel that peace can come among many, hopefully. So thank you. It was really wonderful to hear and see a little bit about what you're doing. I hadn't known.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I go?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well. I'm actually German, so I'm very happy to have gotten to know this program now. Thanks for the great work. Keep it up. I would definitely join, but I'm also not musically gifted at all. But I'll definitely check out what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Jolene.
Without music, sounds great. I'm super happy to have heard that.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to everyone.
Thank you again, Hanan, for trusting to invite us to be here. I know that's a leap of faith too, and I really appreciate it very much. And And thank you to Natalie and Jarius for saying right away that you would join. And I enjoyed seeing you here a lot. It was really great to reconnect. And Andreas and Lenka, nice to see you all here again, and nice to meet some new people too. I appreciate all of your attention, and hope that, well, we'll see each other again. I'm sure we will.
Thank you so much. Wow.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Be well.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.